Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the AIF Knowledge Base. But what we're going to talk about today is the subject of managing specialists with mobile towers. My name's Aers, I'm the Technical Director for PASMA. That's the Prefabricated Access Suppliers and Manufacturers Association. And we're the body that is the recognised experts on the subject of mobile towers. If you're a client and you use a specialist, an expert, for work at height using mobile towers, then I'd suggest there's three things which should interest you about that specialist. 1, competence. 2, equipment. And 3, are they following legislation and guidance? So, competence. What is competence? Well, some of you may know, some of you may not. A person with sufficient professional or technical training and the knowledge, actual experience and authority to enable them to carry out their assigned duties at a level of responsibility, and that's a tricky word, allocated to them. So they've got to know what to do, and they have to be able to carry out those tasks. To recognise potential hazards related to the work or equipment under consideration. Is everyone still with me? To detect any defects or omissions in that work or equipment, recognise any implications for health and safety caused by those defects and omissions, and be able to specify a remedial action to mitigate the implications. Still with me? And that's a definition from ACWAT, which was the Advisory Committee for Work at Height Training. So if that's what competency is, how do you verify that this specialist that you're about to employ or use is actually competent? Well, when it comes to mobile towers, then the recognised method is to ask for their PASMA credentials. And if you're looking for a specialist to supply a mobile tower and to build it, or to design it, and to assemble it, and to dismantle it, then one very easy way, obviously, is to use a PASMA hire and assembly member, a recognised member in that field. All PASMA hire and assembly members have to have staff who are trained to an appropriate level for the task they're carrying out. So it's even the people in the offices who are giving you advice, the people in the yard, the people who are putting up the towers, taking down the towers, transporting the towers. All of them have to be trained to an appropriate level. So you have a measure of comfort there that the guys you're using didn't walk into the office, didn't walk into the yard, didn't climb up the tower yesterday, and that's the first time ever. Okay, the PASMA card, if you're providing the mobile tower yourself, but then you're going to use a person to build that tower, obviously you should verify that the person building that tower is PASMA trained, and you can ask to see their card. What you need to check is that they're trained to an appropriate level for the task you're carrying out. And on the card, there are actually the levels of training that they've received, and it's marked on there. So verify that they are of a level competent to the task that you're doing. And if you need to verify the card, you can always phone PASMA and say, I've got this person on my site, he's given me this card, can I verify that actually it's a real one? Well, there is a hologram on there, as you can see, you can do that. But you can actually verify everything that's on the card by calling PASMA if you need to. If you are supplying the tower or you're using a contractor to supply the tower, you need to make sure that the tower conforms to the relevant standards. And we'll talk about that next. So you need to check the towers to the standards, and you need to check the person who's building the tower is also to the relevant standards, i.e. that they're properly PASMA trained. So the equipment. Mobile towers conform to the standard EN 1004. That's the standard for straight up mobile access towers. It encompasses towers from 2.5 metres up to 8 metres external use, and 2.5 metres up to 12 metres internal use. Mobile towers in configurations other than straight up have to conform to another standard, BS 1139 Part 6. Has everyone written that down? So BS 1139 Part 6, and that includes towers with cantilevers, linked towers, towers that are joined, towers with walk-through and high clearance frames for access, room scaffolds, so that's towers less than 2.5 metres. Now think about that. The standards for EN 1004 is 2.5 metres and above. The standard for towers below 2.5 metres is BS 1139 Part 6. When you're building structures outside of either of those standards, you revert to EN 12811, the standard for temporary works equipment, scaffolding. So if it's that weird and wonderful structure that isn't covered by EN 1004 or 1139 Part 6, you're back to a design under EN 12811. So if you're using a PASMA hire assembly member to carry out the works, they will ensure that all the equipment meets the relevant standards. It is a requirement of their membership. They will make sure that the tower is designed or put together against the relevant standards, and they will follow the relevant guidance. If you're providing the equipment but using a specialist to build them, then you need to ensure that they take those steps. So are they building it to the right standard? And are they competent to actually do that? And if you're a client and a contractor is providing the equipment, same thing. You need to ensure they're using the right equipment to the relevant standards, and that the design or the assembly of the tower is built in accordance with the relevant parts of the standard. Pardon me. So, equipment conforming to the PASMA quality guidance. PASMA publish some guidance regarding the quality of mobile towers. And all mobile towers should conform to that guidance. All PASMA hire and assembly members must make sure their fleets of equipment conform to that guidance, and they're audited against that. And similarly, if you are obtaining equipment from a source otherwise, you need to make sure and ask the question, to what standard has that equipment been inspected and maintained? Like any other of work at height equipment, the process of using mobile towers in the workplace is subject to legislation through regulations, and in particular the Work at Height Regulations 2005 places particular requirements for all work at height activities. But there are other regulations that need to be considered in the process. As a client, you need to make sure that mobile tower activities are carried out appropriately and with regard to the relevant parts of the relevant regulations. Again, if you use a PASMA hire and assembly member, they'll be aware of all that, they'll know what regulations to apply, and they'll carry out their work accordingly. And all PASMA trained personnel, so everyone who's trained by PASMA, has an overview and an understanding of what regulations and legislation apply. And any of those up there, any of those regulations could apply in the construction of a mobile tower. You need to make sure that people are following not just the legislation, but the relevant guidance. And possibly, well, not possibly, the most important piece of guidance that should accompany every mobile tower is the manufacturer's instruction manual. PASMA trainees are taught that if you don't have an instruction manual, basically you don't have a tower. You can't attempt to build a tower without a copy of that manual. And for towers that are outside the scope of a manual, you'll need a special design and a method statement for how to build it, use it, that's important, use it, because that won't be covered in the instructions, adjust it, move it, and dismantle it. So it's not just about how you build it and take it down, it's about all the things that you're actually going to do with it while it's up there. And all of that has to be covered. So again, check. If you're employing someone to do this for you, first question, where's the manual? Can't give me a manual? You can't start work. In terms of overall guidance, the use of mobile towers, PASMA publishes a code of practice, an operator's code of practice, which underpins everything in PASMA training. It's an essential guide, basically, on how to use mobile towers. And if your specialist doesn't have one, can't produce it for you, and I'd suggest if there's not one on every dashboard in every vehicle in his fleet, then you have to ask the question, do they really know about mobile towers? And finally, the HSE guidance CIS 10, that's information from the HSE which specifies the two methods currently recognised for building mobile towers, AGR and 3T. Both methods equally recommended, and both methods are covered in PASMA training and information. So summary, check the competence, check the equipment, check the conformance to legislation and guidance. And if you need to find a PASMA hire and assembly specialist, you can find that from the PASMA website. Thank you for listening. I hope there's been something in there which you found useful. If you need to talk to me about mobile towers, I'll be outside at the back on the PASMA stand. Thank you very much for coming.
What information did you find from today's talk?
Well, basically that we can now get the hire assembly and companies to put tower scaffolds out in different configurations to just the standard one that we're normally used to. So that's be quite interesting for the customer and be able to offer that service, you know. But obviously at the same time, the training's is going to be up and running now, and we can, you know, if the company's got people that they need to get on that training, contact PASMA. Brilliant.
Thank you.